and welcome to a new watercolour video. Today I'm going to be reviewing this Arteza watercolour paper. This is Arteza's new Expert watercolour paper. I did review the ordinary watercolour paper, which was quite a nice budget priced paper. I wasn't so keen on the texture because it was more of a lined texture. That was really my only fault with it, but this one doesn't have that liney texture. It does have a texture. It's quite a nice subtle texture. It's not too rough. And then this is also double-sided as well, so the back side of the paper you can use as well, and that's more smooth. Although it does have, I did notice, and I'll show you here, some little unusual bumps on the back which I don't think are supposed to be there, and it's the same on every page, so I'm guessing the mould that made the paper is making these marks on it as well. I mean, I don't suppose it'll make much difference depending on what you're painting. I mean, if you're painting like a face, a portrait, then you might not want those little bumps on there. Okay, so it's cold pressed, dual side, acid free. It's glue bound at the top here, and there's 32 sheets, but it's a double pack, so you actually get 2 of these pads in the set. And can I just say that painting on the front is just so beautiful. They always choose such beautiful paintings on their packaging. So it's £142 weight, and this one is 9 by 12 inches. Okay, so I'm just going to play around with it now and do a few little doodles and just do some water tests and things like that to see what it's like. Okay, so I've got another 5 different types of watercolour paper just to do some little comparison tests. This is the paper I'm reviewing today, the Arteza Expert, and I've got the Cotman by Winsor & Newton, and I've got the Aquafine by Dale Arowney. So these 3 are all inexpensive non-cotton watercolour papers. Then we've got the Bockingford, which is also non-cotton. It's a wood pulp paper, but it's more of a high-end one. It's more expensive than the top 3. Then I've got the Botanical Smooth, which is actually 50% cotton, and I've got the Saunders Waterford, which is 100% cotton. So cotton, if you don't know, is the best kind of watercolour paper that you can get. So I'll just do a few little comparison tests, and then I'm going to actually paint a picture with the Arteza Expert paper. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to paint a flat circle, and I'm using the same wash for all of the papers, so we know we've got the same strength colour for each. So I can already tell the difference with this Cotman paper, that the paint seems to be sitting on the top of the paper rather than seeping in. So we'll see how they all dry. That one also feels like it's kind of sitting on top of the paper a little bit. Now this is the 50% cotton one, the Botanical Smooth, and it's by St Cuthbert's Mill. This is actually a smooth surface, this one, so I'm not sure if it's a fair comparison. And then this one should technically be the best paper because it's 100% cotton. Now I have already painted a couple of small pictures with the Arteza Expert paper, and I was really impressed with it. It very much felt like I was painting on a cotton paper. Okay, so they're all dry now, and we can see how evenly each one has dried, and the results are very surprising. So first of all I'm going to show you the Cotman one, and as you can see it hasn't dried evenly. The colour is kind of all bunched up to this side, and especially the top, and it even still looks a little bit wet if you look at it on a certain angle. The Aquafine, really uneven also. The Bockingford is dried perfectly equal, so that one's really nice. The Botanical Smooth, almost even. It's not too bad, but this is also a hot press smooth paper, so it might not dry quite as evenly as the other ones which are cold press. Really surprisingly, this has surprised me the most. This is the most expensive 100% cotton paper, and it's dried really unevenly, just like the Cotman and the Aquafine. And then the biggest surprise is the Arteza Expert has dried perfectly evenly. So far so good. That's excellent. Next I'm going to do some masking fluid tests to see how well it works with masking fluid, because some papers, when you rub the masking fluid off, it tears up the paper. So I'll put some of this on all of the papers and leave it to dry for now, and then paint over it a little bit later. Okay, so next I'm going to do a layer test. So I'm just painting a stripe of this green, and then once it's dry I'm gonna glaze different colours over the top. Before I do the glazing layers, I would just want to quickly show you how these stripes have dried. So the Cotman one left a little cauliflower tide mark at the end here. The Aquafine also made a little tide mark. The Botanical Smooth didn't leave a tide mark at the end. And it's dried fairly smooth, but it's not completely even. It's still kind of dark towards this end. The Saunders Waterford, similar situation. It's left it lighter towards this end, so it hasn't evenly spread out after I laid that down. The Bockingford has smoothed out really evenly, but if you look very closely it does have some little white flecks in it, which I find that is quite common with the Bockingford watercolour paper, only if you do like a flat wash. And I think it's just due to the texture of the paper. Some of the little valleys in the paper haven't got fully brushed with the paintbrush. I've only ever found this problem with Bockingford if I've just done little flat swatches. When I've done actual paintings, sorry, the cat's now decided he wants to sit on the desk. When I've actually done paintings on the Bockingford paper, it doesn't leave the little white flecks, and I think that's because, you know, when you've done a full painting, you've probably done lots of layers, and all those tiny little microscopic valleys in the paper get filled in. And then lastly, the Arteza. Now look at that, how smooth and perfect is that? So for even drying of the paint, I think the Arteza is probably the best so far. Okay, so I've done an ultramarine, a lemon yellow, magenta and phthalo blue. So I'll just do that for all the rest and then I'll examine them more closely. Okay, so these are almost dry now. So this is the Aquafine, and as you can see, it's difficult to tell on these colours, but on the yellow you can see where the green has lifted a little bit and run into the yellow. Now I did 3 strokes on each one just to make it fair and even. It has lifted a bit on this, and as you can see, it's also dried really unevenly. It's made these big cauliflower blooms. The Cotman, the yellow hasn't quite fully dried yet, but you can see it's run really bad. That green paint's lifted up and run really bad into the yellow. Doesn't seem so much with these 3, but it's possibly because you just can't really see. It's just more visible with the yellow colour. The Arteza one, there's a little bit of the green gone into the yellow, but not quite as much as the Cotman and the Aquafine. And as you can see, they've all dried really smoothly. Then we've got the Botanical Smooth, very slight lifting of that green paint into the yellow. It's not very much. The Bockingford, very little lifting at all. Doesn't seem to be any lifting on these colours, and you can see the difference of how smooth those have dried. And then the Saunders Waterford, which is the 100% cotton, basically this test has shown up how good the paper is, that it's a much better quality paper. These have dried so even. I'm not quite sure why that didn't dry evenly there, but all the others have, and there's absolutely no lifting whatsoever. I don't think there's any of the green gone into that yellow. So this one is definitely the best in this test. I think the Bockingford and the Arteza Expert are joint second in this one. So again, in this test it does really well, coming in joint second with a paper that's a lot more expensive. That's really good. For the next test, I'm just gonna paint out a nice blended edge with water. I'm just gonna see how smooth I can get a nice gradation. Okay, so these are more or less dry now. The Saunders Waterford and the Arteza seem to have dried evenly and just how I laid it down. The Botanical Smooth as well, it isn't fully dry, but it looks like it's drying in a nice gradation. Now the Cotman and the Aquafine seems to be that the water's pushed its way up into the colour. And then the opposite for the Bockingford. The Bockingford, the colour seems to have pushed its way down into the water more. I suppose when you look at them all as a whole, again, these two, the Cotman and the Aquafine, seem to have performed the worst, because you seem to have a little strip of colour up at the top here, whereas all the others, it seems like an even gradation. Especially the Bockingford, actually I think that one's turned out the best for this test. But yet again, Arteza probably in first or second place, which is unbelievable for the price of this paper. I mean, it's literally so cheap. You get 64 sheets for $27, or if you're in the UK, £24. So basically for a pad of 32, it's only like $14 for 32 sheets, or £12 for 32 sheets if you're in the UK. They're big 9x12 sheets as well, which I think is A4, possibly slightly bigger than A4. I'm just so impressed with it. Okay, so for the next little test, I'm just going to paint 3 colours and let them kind of run into each other and just see what happens. So I'll start with some magenta, some phthalo blue. I'm just going to let it touch and just let it do its own thing, and then some phthalo green. Okay, so those are more or less dry now, and you can see a massive difference between the different papers. First of all, I'll show you the Saunders Waterford. Now that is blended super smooth compared to all the others. I think the Bockingford has blended a little bit better than the Arteza, so I would put the Saunders in first place, Bockingford in second, and Arteza in third. Now the other three I've dried really strange, lots of back runs. The Botanical Smooth, I was particularly disappointed with this one because I do love this watercolour paper, but it's really not performing very well in these tests compared to the other papers. I think it could be because it's so smooth, because it's a hot press paper and all the rest are cold press. And then the Aquafine is just dried kind of terrible, really. I mean, if you were wanting that kind of back run look, if you were wanting a paper that, you know, creates back runs easily, if that was the type of art that you were creating, then the Aquafine and the Cotman would be great for that, especially the Aquafine, because I know a lot of people do like the back runs in their artwork, but if you don't want back runs, it really hinders what you're doing. Okay, so now for the last test, I'm going to lay down some water and do some wet in wet and just see how the colours spread out and how they blend together. I'm going to use the same colours, the magenta, the phthalo blue, the phthalo green, okay, so I'll just leave those to dry and see what happens. Okay, so the Saunders Waterford has dried really smooth with absolutely no back runs whatsoever, and it dries more evenly because it stays wet more evenly. If I show you here, you can see this is about 10 minutes after I painted this, and you can see it's still glistening all over. It's able to keep that moisture even, whereas if you look at all the other ones, they've dried out in one area first, and then this is what creates back runs because it doesn't dry evenly. Now the Botanical Smooth is 50% cotton, but it has not dried smoothly at all. It's quite messy actually, it's not very nice. The Aquafine and the Cotman, this is the Cotman, and you've got these absolutely beautiful back runs that it looks so nice, all these stunning little patterns that it creates, and the same with the Aquafine. So they're absolutely fabulous if you want lovely beautiful back runs. The Arteza also has got absolutely beautiful back runs. The majority of this did stay wet for a long time. It took a long time to dry, and it all gathered in that bottom right hand corner, but it has created these beautiful back run patterns. The Bockingford has just dried absolutely terrible, and I think the main problem is those white flecks have really spoiled the outcome. So depending on what you want, if you want it to dry nice and smooth, then the Saunders Waterford came out on top. For the beautiful back runs, the Cotman, the Aquafine and the Arteza came out on top, and of course they're all the least expensive papers. Okay, so now I'm lifting the masking fluid, and that's how it should come up without actually ripping any of the paper. Okay, unfortunately it's pulling some of the paper off there. I don't know if you can see, but there's little bits of paper stuck to that. So nah, it doesn't work well with masking fluid, unfortunately, which is a shame, but I don't use a lot of masking fluid, to be honest with you, so I'll make sure not to use it on the Arteza paper. You can see how easy it lifted from the Waterford paper. I'll just try the other ones. Okay, lifted really easy from the Aquafine without tearing the paper. The Botanical Smooth, absolutely fine. Now the Cotman, yeah, came off there, no problem. And the last one is the Bockingford. Yeah, and it came off there, no problem as well. Ah, that's a shame. It actually came last in that test, the Arteza paper. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a little picture that I've painted on this paper. I did actually paint this before I did these tests, and I really loved the paper. I also painted another little picture prior to this, and I really liked the paper. It was really comfortable to paint on. I didn't come across any problems. I was pleased with the outcome of the painting, and it actually reminded me of painting on cotton paper. I found it was just really lovely to paint on, and I thought I need to do some tests as well, because I don't want to go ahead and give it a really good review without first comparing it to some other papers. So I'm quite happy that it's a really nice paper. I think it's actually the best wood pulp paper that I've tried. I wasn't quite so sure if it was as good as the Bockingford, because the Bockingford did win out in some of those tests, but quite often this Arteza paper was better than the Bockingford, and sometimes it was equal to it. Those little white flecks in the Bockingford kind of let it down, really. I know that you do only get them when you're laying a flat wash, but they're just a little bit annoying, and I think that just takes away from the Bockingford paper. So I would say although it's not the same as Bockingford, it's on par. And even though I've just done all those little tests and it wasn't perfect in all the tests, but it's just a really nice paper to paint on. So I'm really pleased with it. I think it's another excellent product from Arteza. If you want to buy any of this, please use my link below, because I'll get a commission from Arteza if you do. The other thing that I didn't actually do in the test was lifting out. Now, it does lift out fairly well, but not too easy. And you can see in this painting that I'm doing of these little blueberries, I did have to lift some of the colour back out because it wasn't very even. And it lifted fairly well. I mean, you don't want it to lift too easy, because then it's really bad for layering and doing glazing if the paint will lift too easy from the paper. And at the other end of the scale, if it stains really easy and it's really hard to lift, that can be really annoying as well. If you've made a mistake and you want to lift out and the paper just stains so easily, that's a pain. This is a really happy medium. It's neither too staining nor does it lift too easily, so that was a plus as well. Okay, so I'll just leave you with the rest of the painting. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've found this useful. I can highly recommend the paper. It's one of the best, if not the best, wood pulp paper that I've tried so far.